My phone buzzed on the marble countertop just as the sun dipped below the skyline of Manhattan, painting the glass towers in molten gold. I had been halfway through adjusting the cuff of my silk blouse, readying myself for a late dinner meeting, when I saw the name flash across the screen. Ethan, my brother. We hadn't spoken in weeks, and he rarely called without a reason. A small chill ran down my spine as I swiped to answer. Olivia. His voice came sharp, direct, no small talk. Where's your husband? I steadied my tone, pressing my hand against the counter as if it could hold me upright. On a business trip, I said smoothly, the words practiced. Why? A pause. Then his reply sliced through the calm I tried to wear like armor. No, Liv. He's in Aspen. I just saw him. And he's not alone. The room seemed to tilt. My eyes darted to the wide windows where the city lights flickered awake, pretending everything was ordinary. Inside me, a storm I had spent years containing cracked open. I forced myself to breathe, to keep my voice even. You must be mistaken. But Ethan wasn't mistaken. He never had been, not when it came to protecting me. And just like that, the facade I'd so carefully built, the elegant clothes, the polished career updates, the calm wife mask, trembled. Because Ethan had just confirmed what I had always feared. My perfect marriage was nothing but glass, ready to shatter. I was 22 the night everything changed. Back then, I still lived in my parents' modest colonial-style home in Connecticut, the kind with peeling white shutters and a porch swing that squeaked when the wind pressed against it. My father's rules were carved into the very walls. Work hard, marry well, don't embarrass the family. And I had tried, God, I had tried to play the part of the obedient daughter. But the cracks were already there. That night at dinner, I told them I was applying for a fellowship program in New York. It wasn't glamorous, long hours, little pay, but it was in publishing, the only dream I'd clung to since I was a girl sneaking novels under my pillow. My father's fork clattered onto his plate. Publishing? Olivia, that's not a career. That's a hobby. What you need is stability. A husband who can take care of you. I swallowed, fingers tightening around my napkin. My mother looked away, as though if she didn't meet my eyes, she wouldn't have to choose a side. Ethan was the only one who spoke up. She's good with words, Dad. Maybe you should let her. Enough, my father barked, silencing him. Then his gaze burned into me. If you walk out that door chasing some foolish fantasy, don't expect this family to catch you when you fall. The lump in my throat was so thick I could hardly breathe. My hands shook under the table, my pulse racing. Every fiber of me wanted to scream, to beg them to believe in me. But instead, I reached for the thin silver bracelet around my wrist, my grandmother's gift on my 16th birthday. For when you need courage, she had whispered then. That bracelet anchored me now. I rose from the table, legs unsteady, voice trembling but firm. Then I guess I'll have to learn how to catch myself. I grabbed my coat and walked out into the cold night, the porch swing creaking behind me like a goodbye. That was the night I chose independence, even if it meant losing the only safety net I had ever known. New York did not welcome me with open arms. It chewed me up first. I rented a shoebox apartment on the Upper East Side, 4th floor walk up. Leaky pipes, a radiator that hissed louder than traffic. My days started before sunrise and ended long after the city dimmed, my fingers raw from typing manuscripts no one would ever read. The pay was laughable, barely enough for instant noodles and Subway fare, but it was mine. My choice. My independence. I doubted myself often. Nights curled under thin blankets. I'd wonder if my father was right. Maybe publishing wasn't a career. Maybe I was chasing smoke. Yet each time fear rose, I'd touch the silver bracelet on my wrist. My grandmother's words still echoed, for when you need courage. It was during one of those bleak stretches that I met Margaret Collins. Margaret was everything I wasn't yet, poised, respected, the editor-in-chief of a boutique literary magazine downtown. She was in her 50s, with silver hair swept into a no-nonsense bun and sharp eyes that saw more than you ever admitted. She noticed me one late evening when I stayed behind at a workshop, rewriting a clumsy essay for the fourth time. "You don't quit, do you?" she asked, her voice equal parts amused and impressed. I shook my head. "Not when it matters." That was the beginning. Margaret became the mentor I hadn't known I needed. She pushed me hard, challenged my work, tore my drafts apart, and then showed me how to put them back together. "Words aren't just pretty," she'd say. "They're weapons. Use them well." With her guidance, doors began to open. My first article was published in a small magazine. Nothing major, but I remember standing in a bodega, holding the glossy pages with trembling hands, feeling like I had just claimed a piece of the world. From there, it was slow, but steady. Late nights, rejections, revisions, another chance, another small win. A client here, a column there. I learned to negotiate contracts, to read people's eyes when they underestimated me, to present myself with quiet authority. And I learned something else. Secrecy could be power. When my parents called, I spoke in half-truths. "Yes, I'm doing fine. Yes, I'm working in New York," but never the details. When friends back home asked, I kept my answers vague, downplaying every success. Even Ethan didn't know the full extent. And my husband, well, he preferred to believe he was the star, the breadwinner, the center of our life. I let him. Meanwhile, I built. I saved. I invested. I networked. By 27, I had founded my own boutique agency. By 29, I was ghostwriting for CEOs and politicians who paid more for a single speech than my father had made in months. By 30, my company was quietly thriving. But I kept it all under wraps: the elegant office, the lucrative contracts, the independence. It wasn't about showing off. It was about control. The power of choosing when and to whom. I revealed my truth. Little did I know, the day of that reveal was coming sooner than I thought. The confrontation didn't come with warning. It came on a Saturday morning, the kind where the city outside still stretched lazily awake. I was in my office. Not the shoebox I had once rented, but the top floor of a restored brownstone in Chelsea. Floor-to-ceiling windows washed the space in light, highlighting rows of bookshelves, abstract art on the walls, and a walnut desk polished to a quiet gleam. This was my sanctuary, the place I had built with my own hands, brick by brick, deal by deal. The intercom buzzed. My assistant's voice, calm but curious. "Ms. Hayes, your family is here." For a moment, my heart stuttered. My family. My parents. My brother. And behind them, my husband, Nathan, the man who was supposedly on a business trip. I stood, smoothing the silk of my blouse, adjusting the diamond watch that had once been my first real splurge. My heels clicked softly against the marble floor as I walked to greet them. When the door opened, silence followed. My mother's lips parted, eyes sweeping over the room. The glass conference table, the orchids in the corner, the skyline visible beyond the window. My father stiffened, jaw tightening, as if each piece of evidence challenged everything he had believed. Ethan looked between me and the office with something else entirely in his gaze: pride, and maybe a little awe. Nathan, however, was the one who broke the silence. His face was pale, but his voice carried that familiar arrogance. "So, this is where you've been hiding?" I smiled faintly, controlled. "Not hiding, Nathan. Building." The words hung in the air, heavy. My father finally spoke, his voice low. "Olivia, what is this place?" "This," I said, gesturing around us, "is my company. Hayes Communications. I founded it 5 years ago. I run it. Every book on these shelves, every contract framed on these walls, they're mine. Earned. Built from the ground up." My mother's hand trembled as she reached for the back of a chair. "But you never told us." "No," I said evenly. "Because you all told me once that chasing words was a foolish fantasy. That I'd fall. And when I walked away, you let me. So I learned to catch myself. And I kept catching myself until I didn't fall anymore." Ethan's lips curved into the smallest of smiles. My father's face reddened, but he stayed silent. Nathan, though, wasn't finished. "So what? You've made some money, decorated an office. That doesn't change the fact that I provide for us. I turned then, really looking at him. The man I had once trusted, the man who thought a business trip was an excuse to sneak away to Aspen with someone else. My voice was calm, but the steel underneath was undeniable. You don't provide for us, Nathan. You never did. This office pays for our home. My work funded our vacations. The accounts you think you manage? They're mine. Every cent. You've been living off me without even realizing it. The silence that followed was different now, sharp, electric. My father's eyes widened. My mother gasped. Even Ethan seemed stunned. Nathan's face drained of color. That's not possible. I opened the drawer of my desk, pulled out a folder, and slid it across the table. Contracts. Tax forms. Proof. He stared at it, then at me. For the first time in our marriage, Nathan was speechless. I let the moment stretch, every second a weight pressing down on them all. And then I said the words I had been holding back for years. I don't need any of you to catch me. I've been flying on my own all along. The room fell into a silence that was no longer disbelief. It was respect. And fear. I stayed standing as they all absorbed the truth. There was power in height, in not shrinking, in making them look up to me. My father's voice broke the silence first. Olivia, if this is true, then I owe you an apology. I studied him, the man who had once dismissed my dreams as hobbies. His apology was clumsy, incomplete, but it was something. Still, I knew better than to let old patterns creep back. This isn't about an apology, I said gently but firmly. This is about what happens next. My mother looked up, her eyes damp. What do you mean? I began, pacing slowly across the room, that if you want a relationship with me, with the woman I am now, it comes with conditions. No more belittling. No more dismissing my choices. You don't have to understand them, but you will respect them. My father stiffened, as though the word respect was a foreign demand. Yet he said nothing, which was its own kind of concession. Then I turned to Nathan. His eyes were darting everywhere but mine, as though if he avoided my gaze, he could still pretend control. And you? I said softly, the softness sharper than a blade. You have two choices. Walk away, and I'll make sure the divorce settlement is clean, swift, and fair. Or stay, but under conditions. He finally met my eyes, swallowing hard. What conditions? I took a step closer. Transparency. Fidelity. Equality. No more secrets, no more lies, and no more pretending I need you to complete me. If you stay, it's because you're ready to stand beside me, not in front of me. He opened his mouth, closed it again. His pride was collapsing under the weight of reality. And if I don't agree, he asked quietly, then Aspen can keep you, I said simply. Ethan chuckled under his breath, quickly disguising it as a cough. My mother shot him a look, but even she couldn't suppress the flicker of a smile. I wasn't finished. Turning back to my parents, I added, and one more condition. You will stop trying to mold Ethan into someone he isn't. He deserves the same chance you never gave me, to define his own life. Ethan's head snapped toward me, eyes wide. Gratitude shimmered there, unspoken but loud. My mother's lips trembled. My father looked like he wanted to protest, but he didn't. Maybe because, for once, he couldn't deny the results of letting me go. Finally, I sat down, folding my hands on the desk as though sealing the conversation. These are not ultimatums. They're boundaries. If you want to be in my life, you respect them. If not, I gestured to the door. Then you're free to leave. The silence stretched, thick and loaded. My father cleared his throat, muttering, "We'll do better." My mother nodded quickly, almost desperately. Ethan gave me a small, proud smile. And Nathan? He sat frozen, staring at me as though I'd become someone he didn't recognize. Maybe I had. The truth was, I wasn't the fragile girl they had once known. I was a woman who had caught herself, built herself, and now stood strong enough to set the rules of her own life. For the first time, they were all realizing it. In the days that followed, something shifted. My parents didn't transform overnight. People rarely do. But they started trying in small ways. My mother called more often, not to lecture but to listen. My father, stubborn as ever, sent me clippings of articles he thought I'd like, his awkward way of acknowledging my work. It wasn't perfect, but it was effort. And that meant something. Ethan flourished too. For the first time, he spoke openly about his own plans, moving to California, starting a design firm with a college friend. The weight of expectations seemed to lift from his shoulders, and I couldn't help but smile each time I saw him speak with a confidence he hadn't shown before. Nathan, well, that was different. He stayed for a while, trying, fumbling through apologies, promising change. But the truth was, Aspen had revealed more than just infidelity. It had revealed who he truly was, and who I no longer needed. When the divorce papers were finally signed, I felt no grief. Only release. One quiet evening, I sat alone in my office, the city glowing beyond the windows. The silver bracelet rested against my wrist, catching the light. I ran my fingers over it, remembering the girl I once was, trembling, silenced, dismissed. The girl who walked out of her parents' house with nothing but a dream and a promise to herself. She had been so afraid, and yet she had kept walking. I leaned back in my chair, closing my eyes, listening to the hum of the city that had once seemed so unforgiving but had become my greatest ally. Every sacrifice, every sleepless night, every rejection, they had carved me into this version of myself. A woman who could stand alone. A woman who could demand respect. A woman who could fly. I thought of my grandmother's words again, whispered years ago. For when you need courage. I smiled softly. I found it. I murmured to the empty room. And for the first time in my life, I knew the truth wasn't something to fear. It was something to own. Because I wasn't the girl who needed catching anymore. I was the woman who had learned how to soar.